My wife, Eleanor, and I lived side by side for more than 6 decades. From the outside, everyone thought our marriage was steady and peaceful. But the truth is, many times we came dangerously close to the edge of breaking apart, not because of one great crisis, but because of small mistakes that quietly piled up over the years. I lived inside that marriage every single day. And there are things I wish I had understood much earlier. Some wounds don't come from arguments, but from silence that lasts too long. We once loved each other deeply, and then, at some point, we forgot how to be together. Not because we didn't try, but because we tried in the wrong ways for far too long. What I'm about to share isn't meant to blame anyone or teach a lesson. It's simply a true story for those who still have time to choose differently before it's too late. Our first mistake began very quietly, so quietly that neither of us noticed it at the time. It was the habit of silently measuring who had sacrificed more in the marriage. In each of our minds, there was always an invisible list, a quiet record of everything we had done and everything the other person hadn't done enough of. I remembered how hard I worked, how I provided for the family, fixed the house, and I wondered why I still felt exhausted and unappreciated. Eleanor had her own list as well, filled with quiet efforts I never fully saw. That constant counting slowly made us see each other as two opposing sides instead of two people carrying a life together. Keeping score like that allowed resentment to build in a very silent way. We didn't have explosive arguments, and we didn't hurt each other with harsh words. Everything happened quietly, slowly enough that each of us believed it was just temporary fatigue. But over the years, the feeling of unfairness kept growing. Instead of seeing each other as partners, we began to see the other as one side of a transaction. Who gave more? Who took more? Who was losing out? Little by little, intimacy was worn away. Things once done out of love became obligations. Effort no longer brought joy. It became a way to prove that we had done enough. And when a marriage turns into silent comparison, both people gradually feel lonely inside the relationship itself. After many years of living with that quiet sense of comparison, we moved into another mistake without realizing it at the time. Our second mistake was trying to change each other. Eleanor liked planning, needed to know things in advance to feel secure. I was the opposite, more spontaneous, believing everything would work out somehow. We both thought that if the other person would just change a little, life together would be easier. But the more we tried to reshape each other, the more exhausted we became. Suggestions slowly turned into complaints. The differences that once made us curious in the beginning became a constant source of tension, and understanding drifted farther and farther away. Only when we were both exhausted from trying to change each other did we finally slow down and see things more clearly. We realized that our differences weren't mistakes that needed fixing, but simply the ways each of us existed and moved through life. Eleanor planned things not because she wanted to control me, but because planning made her feel safe. And my spontaneity wasn't irresponsibility, but the way I found joy and a sense of ease. When we stopped opposing each other, we learned how to complement one another. Eleanor kept our family life steady and structured. I brought moments of surprise, things that didn't live on any schedule. That balance didn't come from being the same, but from accepting and respecting each other's differences. Once we learned to accept those differences, we faced another mistake that was just as dangerous. Our third mistake was not speaking up about discomfort in time. I often chose silence, believing that letting things go would keep peace at home. Eleanor did the same, holding back her unhappiness so things wouldn't become tense. But feelings don't disappear when they're hidden. They settle quietly, waiting for the smallest reason to spill over. Sometimes it took only a forgotten task or a careless remark for everything to erupt. In those moments, we weren't talking about the present anymore, but unloading everything that had been building up for months, even years. After those explosions, we slowly came to understand that silence isn't always an act of kindness. When we began learning to speak earlier, everything changed in a very different way. We practiced talking while emotions were still calm, when problems were small and not yet buried under resentment. Instead of accusing each other, we tried to speak honestly about how we felt. Conversations that once frightened us became gentler. They were no longer battles to win or lose, but moments of listening and adjustment. Each time we understood a little more of each other's inner world. And that understanding gradually healed the distances that silence had created over so many years. When our conversations finally became calmer, we began to notice another mistake that had quietly existed for many years. Our fourth mistake was letting the marriage run on autopilot. Life pulled us into work, children, and daily responsibilities. We still talked to each other, but most of our conversations revolved around schedules, bills, and whatever needed to be done next. Questions about feelings, thoughts, or dreams slowly disappeared. We lived under the same roof, yet drifted through our days like two people jointly managing a shared life. There were no major conflicts, but there was no real closeness either. Everything felt steady enough that we mistook it for stability. It was only when a sense of emptiness appeared, even while we were together, that we understood emotional connection needs to be nurtured. It doesn't survive on time alone. Once we realized that, we began to change in very small, quiet ways, without drama or display. We returned to eating dinner together, sitting across from each other instead of retreating into our own corners. In the evenings, we took walks around the neighborhood, not talking about work or responsibilities, just sharing how our day had been. We chose to make time for each other, even if it was only a few quiet minutes. Those small moments slowly brought back a sense of intimacy we had lost. Not the intense passion of the early days, but a calm, peaceful closeness. That intentional presence reminded us that a marriage needs daily care. It can't be left for time to decide its fate. In the end, our biggest mistake was forgetting that we were on the same team. When you see your partner as someone to defeat or out-argue, every disagreement leaves a distance behind. Only when we remembered that every problem belonged to both of us did we learn to talk in order to understand, not to prove who was right. Thomas and Eleanor are not a perfect story. We are still different, still tired at times, still uncertain. What changed is that each day now holds a clear choice. The choice to turn toward each other instead of away. If you're listening to this, perhaps you're also in a relationship that feels incomplete but not yet over. Maybe all it takes is slowing down and seeing each other again as companions. If this story has given you something to think about, leave a few words to share your thoughts. And stay with the channel so we can continue having slow, meaningful conversations like this.